You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
For the community, by the community.
Hi, and thanks for joining me for yet another special edition of Two Guys and a Lot of Wine. I'm Bobby P.
And I'm James Kimbrough.
And I'm pleased to have one of our regular guests on our show, wine guru, Mr. Eli Ross. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, no problem. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me back. I'm sort of a semi-regular.
You are. You're the Alec Baldwin of Two Guys and a Lot of Wine.
Was it one more visit and you get the 5 guest club
That's right.
membership?
Hey.
And our show tonight's going to be Zany for Zen. We're going to do just a strictly Zinfandel tasting show tonight. And Jim and I have talked about doing a one varietal show for a while. And this is going to be really exciting.
It'll be good to get a little bit of contrast between the same varietal.
Now, were you thinking this as part of a Thanksgiving kind of idea?
It's the fall. As you can see, some of us have plaids on, so it's a little cooler when you're watching this episode. So I know sometimes whites go with turkey and so forth, but this is just a nice hearty red wine that we'll be talking about tonight.
And Zinfandel is actually a great pair for Thanksgiving. When we did our last Thanksgiving show, this is one of the, we had the Old Vine Zinfandel from Gerard.
You're right, we did.
That was a great pair for Thanksgiving. So I think anything we're going to have tonight will probably go well with the turkey.
And before we take our first sip, I just wanted to give a great big shout out and thank you to the Take 5 event for West Hartford Television, celebrating 35 years at Wampanoag Country Club. It was a great time. They raised a lot of money. We all had a great time. Our wine basket and our ability to appear on our show went for a good amount of money, so thank you guys. And we look forward to having them on the show too. So thanks again, WHCTV, and all you attended the Take 5 event. Now it's drink time. So let's go right into some little talk about Zin, and what's our first tasting tonight?
Well, the first one we're going to have is Truant, and the reason we're putting this one first is that I'm just guessing, based on what we've got lined up here, I think it's going to be the lightest in body. So if we're going to try and work our way to the heavier bodies in, hopefully we got this lined up correctly.
And these are California, which in general a Zinfandel is technically usually from California, the grape varietal.
Yeah. Well, if you want to trace it all the way back, and we talked about this before the show, this is, I think the Romans were planting this in Croatia back in 32 BC.
Yeah, actually that's right. Originally the Zinfandel grape was assumed to be an original California grape, but some DNA testing, like Eli and we were talking earlier, they did trace it back to Croatia. And I guess part of the early Roman Empire was Primitivo, I think it was called back.
Right, in southern Italy. And I think that actually, it's legal for that to be imported into the U.S. as and labeled as Zinfandel, but you're more likely to see it as Primitivo. But as we said, far and away, most of the Zins you find on the shelf today are going to be from California. So
now this has a very mild aroma right off the bat.
It does. It's easy drinking, though.
And as our last Body Basics show shows, this has some legs, though. At least in my glass.
A little bit. Yeah, and the color, it's kind of light. Most Zinfandels are lighter in color. Kind of. Well, you were talking about different winemaking techniques. You can get a little darker, but this tends to be more on the Pinot Noir side of the spectrum rather than the Cab side. And
we'll get to it a little bit later too. A lot of it depends on how you blend it and what do you use to you can add some low end kind of heft to it that way. But this is good. I mean, this could go with a salmon or something like that. It's different than a Pinot, but it's got some of that same body.
I agree with you, and I sort of like the aftertaste in this. It's mild. It's not too astringent. It's definitely different than some of the other reds you've either drank with us on the show or have had on your own, which is why we're doing a Zinfandel show, because I know Jim and I are sort of big fans of a Zin. And this is a really nice start to our tasting tonight.
I enjoy this. And this is one I'm blind tasting tonight. I've not had this before.
Oh, you haven't had this one before? Just come from word of mouth or just?
I was looking for something else to put in the lineup tonight.
Is there anything about the name? Was the guy in trouble at school a lot? Or what's the...
No, it was. I got this at Maximum Beverage, and they had a couple of different choices, and I went with this one. So it's.
And the price point?
Price point's $12 to $14.
Oh, that's
retail,
very reasonable.
So it's a very reasonable price. And having let this linger a little in my mouth, I still enjoy the aftertaste on this. So it's I'd serve this. You could do this with stuff off the grill if you wanted to. Zinfandels tend to pair really well with any kind of barbecue or spicy curry.
So throw some barbecue sauce in that turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
Now, you probably were noticing that we're using a little bit higher end glasses than we normally do on the show, because Zinfandels actually, they open up or taste better using a higher stem glass, from what my research has shown and also my own tasting has shown. So we're using a little bit better glasses than you would generally see on the show, and we'll hopefully not get too.
Although I don't, I think you would have trouble finding a Zin specific glass. So if you're trying to, like you said, just look for one that has a nice bowl, get those aromatics. You're probably not going to come across one that's just for Zin, but. Hey,
we did a whole show on Riedels, and it was amazing how much of a difference the glass
Oh
made
yeah, absolutely.
in the taste of the wine.
Absolutely.
So I think going with a glass like this tonight was the right way to go to get the right taste for us.
Now, is there a year on this one? Because from what my research has also shown that Zinfandels actually taste better on the younger side, but some do age well.
Yeah, I don't know the year for this one, but most of the ones that I looked at were 2010, 2011, so very young.
They're sort of jiving with your experience.
Yeah, for the most part. We'll get to it when we get to the ridge in the middle. I've had some from the early '90s that still drink okay.
They actually get more mellow over time.
Yeah, it's a different wine. Kind of again, you got to start with some pretty solid stuff to be able to last that long. But yeah, you're right. Far and away, most of them are meant to be drunk within 2 to 5 year type window.
Now this is a young one we're having next. It's a 2013.
So what's the plan with the Black Ridge? Are we gonna?
That will be. We'll open that up if we have
pinch hitter.
time.
Okay.
Yeah. So is that the one we want to go with next with the Black Ridge, Jim?
No, we'll if we have time, we'll get back to it. But
If we run, if we're still thirsty,
I'm sorry.
we'll come back to
the one that the Ridgewood.
The Ridge, yes.
The Ridge, yes,
yeah.
okay.
So this is a Ridge 2011, Three Valleys. So as I was telling the guys before the show, Ridge has been, they got into the business really making Zin and then in about the mid-'60s actually in California. And they're pretty well accomplished. They have about 15 different ones that are out. And everyone except for this one is a single vineyard, which means that all the grapes for that particular bottling come from one site. This is a blend of different vineyards. The Three Valleys is Sonoma County. If you guys, I think one or both of you have been out there before. This is Russian River Valley, Dry Creek, and Alexander Valley. So it's different vineyard sites. I think this year it was like 7 or something like that, 7 different vineyards.
Did any of those vineyards take a hit because of the drought out there this year, or what's been the story with that?
I think in this particular vintage in 2011, from what I understand, they had a little more rainfall than normal in Sonoma, so it wasn't a particularly hot or big year. But these guys, they do tend towards a more delicate style of Zin. It's not the in-your-face 18% alcohol type thing. And also what's unique, if you look on the label closely, you'll see it doesn't say Zinfandel because it's only 65%. So they blend Petit Syrah and a couple other secondary grapes, but Petit Syrah is almost like 20% of this wine, which gives it some more spice, apparently. So
they can't legally call it Red Zinfandel.
Right, 75% in California at least, I think, is the cutoff. If you're below that, then you can just call it the name of the wine. And a lot of winemakers, to save on labeling costs, I think if they tend to do that, they'll just keep the Zin off the label, whatever, because it varies from year to year. So.
Actually, we didn't talk about the alcohol content in our first one, and I'm looking at it, I think it's 14%. And Zins tend to be a little on the higher alcohol side.
Yeah,
can you read that one, Eli, and yours? Because a little.
Yeah, let's see. I'm thinking this is probably in the same ballpark, 13-ish, something like that. Yeah.
And that's generally the range for a lot of Zins.
This is on the lower end.
Yeah, 13 to 16, 17%. And you compare that with the white Zinfandel. So white Zinfandels are 9%, 10%. And I think that's what attracts a lot of people to white Zinfandel when they first start drinking it, is that it's a very low alcohol content. It's got such a high sugar content. I think it's more reminiscent of the sodas that they drink when they're a kid, or the fruit juices, and so it's I think a good entry point for them to get into wine. But hopefully they move away from that very quickly. It's just white Zinfandels are not very complex.
No. That is correct, and I still cringe whenever I hear the term white Zinfandel. So I am not cringing on this one. This one is distinctly different than the Truant. This is a drier Zinfandel. I notice it seems to have dried my inside of my mouth a little bit more.
And this is what I was talking about before. With this has the structure that's set up. I mean, this is probably should be drunk in the next 5 years, but it has some stuffing to go with it. It's got some of the spice, and it's a little bit fuller bodied. By the way, I've been on this show a few times. Do we give a thumbs up or medium, or do that at the end, or how does that?
You know, we did do the first one, and I'm going to give a thumbs up to the first one. I enjoyed the first one.
A thumbs up
Yeah.
also.
As a starter, especially, I think you good choice, right?
Great choice for a starter, absolutely. And this one definitely sort of is that one that's a little bit more interesting to analyze as we're talking about it, because
I
there's a lot going on in the mouth.
This has like a year of aging on oak, so I definitely get some of that going on. This is price point wise. This is about $20, which is about as low as these guys go. I mean, they're fairly well known. Their single vineyard Zins are in the mid 30s, so a special, more of a special occasion. But Thanksgiving, hey,
Well, something else that contributes to the cost of a Zinfandel is the fact that the clumps of grapes will ripen at a different point in time. So the individual grapes on there, if you pluck the whole clump off, some of it would still be green, some of it would be overripe, and some of it would be just ripe. And so what a lot of the vineyards do is they go down the vine multiple times over a couple of weeks, and they'll just pluck individual grapes that are ready to be harvested. And obviously all that labor is going to drive the cost up for the bottle.
Absolutely. Do the price structure, and I know you're a big collector yourself, Eli, does it vary a lot? Can you get really expensive Zins, or they tend to be under $50, $60?
I think the highest you'll get, there's a producer in California called Turley, and it's actually a female winemaker and owner, and her stuff, it's usually by mailing list, and that's about as high as you'll get, which is in the maybe 75 or 80. So you're not going to get $300-400, but yeah, you do get some. You can get up there, but yeah, I think the vast majority are probably in the $13 to $20 range, and then a few going up from there. So,
but for a few audiences members who actually collect wine, can you collect and store Zinfandel for a long time?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the stuff from the 70s. I mean, these wines have been made since the early 70s, and I've had some from the early 90s that are still kicking around, and they're collectible, but they're they're not as, I guess, classic agers as a Burgundy or Bordeaux would be. So.
Yeah, would you expect it to taste better with aging or worse with aging?
Well, I think what happens is, in most cases, they're not overly tannic. I mean, this one is more than the Truant, but what happens is, the fruit starts to integrate. So from that standpoint, they're pretty approachable, young, unlike other wines that you have literally, right, they need time just to come around. So I guess the bottom line is they can be aged, but there's certainly I don't think they go through a dumb phase, or there's a time when you can't approach them. They're good no matter what. And the ones that are really good, like Ridge, tends to be, you can check in on a 20-year-old one, and it'll be different, but it'll be interesting. Yeah.
That's very interesting, like I said, because we have our first two reds, Zinfandels, have been very distinctly different tasting. And it's going to be interesting as Jim and Eli finish their red. I'll talk a little bit about the ones you might be seeing with number one and the red bag. I decided to throw a little monkey wrench in the mix tonight because it is a red Zinfandel. I found this one actually today, and I wanted to include this in our Zinfandel tasting tonight because it's so uniquely different. I'm really curious how you're going to rank it at the end of the evening.
But you haven't tried this.
No, I have not tried this, and but because of its uniqueness, I'm just curious how a wine guru like both Jim and Eli, especially Eli with his vast experience, is going to feel about that. The price points are similar to what we're drinking tonight. It's not like I'm throwing a $2 bottle of $2 Chuck in there, but it's got an interesting history. So I'm very curious when we get to that what you're going to think of it.
I can't wait to hear.
There's a lot of buildup here. Right?
Yeah,
it's exciting. I just want you to pour it because that felt looks a little slippery. So,
Well, the felt actually is interesting, and Jim and I have talked about this before doing blind wine tastings because people sometimes will judge with their eyes and not with their mouth. And it's a kit that's available locally. They give you 4 bags, numbered 1 through 4. And if you're doing either a Zin tasting or a Cab tasting or a Pinot Noir tasting, you just open the bottles up before your guests arrive, put everything in a bag like that, drink them, rate them, and let the people decide with their palates what's good, not what they think the price point is.
And it looks a lot better than just wrapping the bottle in tinfoil.
It does, and we've done that.
Yeah.
We have done that many times, actually. So, but this is a little bit classier, and I figure we're getting older, Jim. We got to class it a little bit.
I can't wait to try that one.
All right, that was very enjoyable, Eli. Thank you for that one. And you said the price point on that was
Right around $20.
$20.
Available locally.
All right, I'm going to give it a thumbs up.
Oh yeah, that's a thumbs up, absolutely. Big thumbs up on that one. I actually like it a little bit more because it's drier, which I tend to like my reds a little on the drier side.
Yeah, and I think that you could have with maybe a fattier food, pork chop, steak, or something like that.
Oh, Manchego cheese.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
I'll do a smaller pour on this in case it's so hideously bad you can't drink it.
Color looks, in family with what we've had.
It might be on the lighter side like Jim's first one. I don't know. It is a blend of the Zyn and the Petite Syrah that we talked about earlier.
And what drew you to this bottle?
Boy, how do I answer
Or is that going to give it away?
No, actually, it's not.
Okay.
I actually had a couple Zyns in my cellar, which is the Black Ridge, that we haven't opened yet tonight, and we may or may not open it. And I wanted to get something else that I was not familiar with at all, by both looks and knowledge at all. And this was next in the Zyn section at the wine store I was at. I said, that is very interesting. So that's why I got it.
Got a very jammy nose.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got some real stewed prune, kind
Yeah.
of burned rubber type thing.
It's don't burn rubber. That's not a good. That's never good to hear.
If you like that, hey, if you're into Fast and the Furious or something.
It has the most strongest nose of our wines tonight.
Yeah, I'd be interested when you unveil this to know about how they age this, right? Because you certainly don't get that oak vanilla type thing. You're getting a lot of that. So.
I'm going to give this a fair shot. I'm going to have a cracker, cleanse the palate.
Once again, it's another unique tasting wine. The characteristics are completely different than our first two.
I'm guessing this may not be from California.
Ooh, I can't answer that. I will tell you that. No, I can't actually.
Well, no. I know there'll be an unveiling. I'm just throwing that out there, right? You gotta, you gotta lay it on the line, especially if you're a guru like us, Jim.
All right, then I will tell you there is California in this wine.
Okay.
There is.
Okay.
Yeah, I say that because I'm also getting some kind of green notes like underripeness, which I tend to associate more with places that are not as maybe cooler climate type thing.
That's very interesting.
And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about some of the vineyards that will harvest all the grapes at once. And this tastes to me like they have pressed all of them together. So you've got some really ripe grapes and some unripe grapes all in the same bottle.
I can say I'm not crazy about the nose on this one.
No.
There is something slightly unpleasant about the nose on this one.
Well, and it seems compared to the first two were different, but there were similarities, right? I mean, you could tell they were they were same varietal, right, in family.
This one is completely different.
Yeah.
And once again, without giving too much away, right now, it's certainly not my favorite that we drank so far tonight.
Not mine either. And if you'd said, name this varietal, I wouldn't have picked Zinfandel.
Yep.
Yeah, it's missing a little of the spice, too, that I associate with the Zyn. But, I mean, again, it's not, we didn't just double over in pain or pour it out, right? It's not that terrible, but.
Yeah, once again, it's not a question of terrible or good. It's just
different.
There's nothing that I find enjoyable enough to sit and probably consume, this on a long-term basis.
And I don't even think that's where we're drinking it in the lineup tonight. If we'd had this first, I think I'd still have the same impressions that I have right now, which is, it's okay wine, it's not great.
Sometimes an aroma of a wine when you first drink it is not pleasant, but the wine itself is spectacular. This is one of the examples where the aroma is not that good, and it's not that the flavor is bad, but it's not that good.
Yeah, the flavors to me are a little more confected, kind of like a liqueur almost, which I think gets into that jamminess, like if you ever had creme de cassis, that kind of thing. Good point. It is kind of that, which again is very different than the other ones, which were more integrated, more the tannins and the other components going on.
Well, I will say, just even more of a teaser to this episode, Eli hit something spot on earlier on when he was analyzing this wine, which once you know what the wine is, you will say, well, that explains everything. So good job, Eli. But you got to wait till I tell you what it is.
Okay, delayed gratification.
All right. Are you going to reveal this?
We haven't had the fourth one yet.
Oh, you want to do all four?
You know what? I don't have to wait if you really want to know. If that's what it is.
You're killing me. And you're killing our audience. They want to know.
I'll take it out of the bag at the end of the show, but it actually is a Santianello. It's a blend of California Zinfandel and Petite Syrah, Massachusetts.
Oh,
yep.
All right. Now I know why you bought
It's
this.
from Massachusetts, so it's got some California grapes in there. California with some Massachusetts.
So what's the
mixture.
Massachusetts component? The Petite Syrah?
I believe it's the Petite Syrah. Yeah.
Interesting.
But as soon as you said a cold weather environment, there you go. And as all of you know, there are plenty of vineyards in the Northeast here in New England, and there's some good, there's some bad. And when I saw this one, and it's labeled as a red Zin, and it's actually a small vineyard, and I said, well, I'll give it a shot. And
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea for a future show. Maybe would be kind of cold climate reds, which is Finger Lakes, which is known for whites. And but if you taste enough of those, you do pick up on those same sort of things.
Fascinating.
My wife and I just did a wine tasting. It was all Massachusetts vineyards, and we had a couple that honestly were pretty good.
Yep.
And so to go back to your point, we could do a show just locally produced wines and actually come up with a couple of winners.
And actually, the winemaker, Scott Santinello, has been making wine for a long time. And actually, he purchased this vineyard not too long ago, and he wanted to try to make a Zin that was comparable to a good California. I don't think he succeeded in this particular one, but I'm not. Some people might drink this and really like it.
Yeah.
But there's something a little off on it.
Red Zinfandels tend to be sweeter to begin with than most other red wines, and that definitely came out in this glass. Was that the sweet component was a little overpowering?
Yeah,
for
the
me.
balance wasn't there. Yeah, but I think also it suffered in being in a lineup like this, right? If you just had this at a tasting room or with some crackers, you'd be like, this is pretty good.
But the classic example of the price point is between $13.99 and $15.99. So it's trying to compete with other Zins that actually have some good bodies, some good characteristics to them. So once again, it doesn't work for me on this one. So.
Yeah, but I mean, good for them for not pricing themselves out.
Yes.
Kind of
Yep.
from that standpoint. So.
Now you can't buy this here in Connecticut. You can only buy it in Massachusetts. So if you want to try it and not have as much pleasure as I did, just go over the border and pick up a bottle and try it. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll like it. So. Once again, Eli, awesome that you picked up the colder climate. That's pretty cool. So,
all right, we're on to the Saldo.
All right.
Now this is a high-end wine. This goes for about $35 to $40 a bottle. Bob and I actually tried this at the Fleming's 100 tasting last month and fell in love with it, and decided since we're doing Zinfandel tonight, we had to include this in the lineup. So Bob and I have both had this. This is probably your first time tonight trying this, Eli.
Yeah, I've never had this before. It's interesting.
and I want to point out, you never should buy wine this way, but it's an awesome bottle. The label, that's so
It's
cool.
so high end that all they could afford was a Dymo label maker.
They put all their money into the wine. That's what you want to see.
And can you see what the alcohol content is on this one?
This, I think, is about 16%,
Oh yeah, yeah.
15.9.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that might be the
So-
highest. I think the Massachusetts one is in the 14 range. So.
Yeah. Now, people sometimes complain about Zinfandel being too hot, and that's just because it has such a high alcohol content. So, you drink something that's 16%, 17% alcohol. It can have kind of a warming feeling in the mouth, and some people find that unpleasant. But let's give this a try and see how warm it is. Great nose.
Fascinating.
Very silky.
Very silky at first. Definitely.
Getting a lot of spice on the
Yeah,
back end.
definitely a lot of spice. Absolutely.
And the spice comes from the high alcohol content.
But I wouldn't. I would say this is maybe pushes up to the edge of hot, but it doesn't. To me, it's not. That doesn't kind of off-putting.
Right. It's not an unpleasant burn
Right.
at all.
I will say, though, it's just at the borderline for me. Generally, I don't drink high alcohol liquor to begin with. So for my palate, I just sort of get that little hotness, like it was a brandy or something like that. But it's still pleasurable.
But you've had wine in the past that was too hot. It had that burning sensation, and that kind of overpowered everything else in the glass. And I don't get that with this either. I think it's got just enough alcohol, just enough spice to kind of complement the fruit in this.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, to me, the higher alcohol becomes a bigger problem when you're talking about food pairing. If you're just going to drink it on its own, you can kind of work it into the flow of a night of having responsibly, right? A few glasses of whatever, but yeah, I mean, from a food pairing standpoint, this would be a little bit harder.
It would
like
be.
you said, maybe a really spiced burger or something, with some.
Definitely redder meat.
Yeah.
Well, that's why Fleming's carries it probably.
Right.
Yeah, they want to serve a steak with this.
Exactly.
And actually, I should ask Jim, I know we tasted this at Fleming's, and I know it's one of the wines they carry, but how did you buy it? Was it available locally, or how did you?
Yeah, I got this at Maximum Beverage, right?
You
here in
did?
West
That's
Hartford.
right, okay.
Yep.
And are they carrying everything that Fleming's was selling that
You
night?
know what? I didn't check. I was just looking for Zins, but they've got a great selection there. And if you can't find something in the store, just ask, and they can oftentimes order something for you. If it's legally available for sale here in Connecticut, they can get it in.
I'm going to suggest something, which I didn't think I'd be able to do tonight, but I'm going to do it. I am so curious to have that fifth bottle opened up that I think I'm going to open up
All right.
because I was so disappointed with what I thought would be the big, maybe positive aspect of the evening, the hidden Massachusetts Zinfandel. But I was so disappointed. I mean, now there's some history in the Black Ridge. Now, Jim, you might recall this several years back when we hosted another WHCT event. That wasn't one of the ones we served, but me
At
and
the
Jim.
black tie event?
The black tie event. But I had this one behind the bar for just special
yes.
people.
You and I were drinking this.
And I recall this, and I've had this downstairs since that event. I bought 4 bottles, that's the only one left. It's a moderately priced Zin, but I thought it was spectacular. I thought it was smooth and delicious.
And what year is this?
I actually
2010?
don't know if this one has a date on
Or
it
is
either.
that non-vintage?
Yeah, I think it's a non-vintage.
Okay.
When I looked it up before the show, most of the Black Ridges are 2010s, so it's probably a 2010.
So what do we think? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs medium?
For me, it's going to be thumbs medium only because I get the tightest bit of burn, but I still can drink this over a meal.
It's so silky. I love that characteristic about the wine. I'm giving it a thumbs up. Having compared it now to everything else we've had tonight, it does have a more pronounced burn.
Yep.
And I would prefer something else that we drank earlier, but it's still fantastic.
But at the end of the night, this would be, I give it thumbs up just, within the right context, I would
Yeah.
say, as a finishing type wine.
Yeah, not an everyday wine, but if you pair it right, great wine.
Absolutely, and like I said, it's one of those wines where you sort of have to have the right food to go with it. This is only like the second time in over almost 4 years that we've done 5 tastings on the show. So once again, I blame Massachusetts. I love our friends to the north, but I'm going to blame you guys. I was in Massachusetts today, which is why I bought that.
It's going to be funny if you and I start bringing a bunch of Massachusetts wines onto this show.
Yeah, actually, it would be very interesting because I'd be very curious to compare Massachusetts vineyards to Connecticut vineyards.
Okay, so a little Massachusetts wine trivia.
Yeah, a little, battling going on.
So what can happen is a retailer there can also be an importer, which you cannot do in Connecticut. So it's possible for people to direct import there. So you can find some shops that have really interesting stuff because of that. So.
All right, so we got 2 minutes left before we wrap up the show. So let's give this a good, honest opinion. Probably the
How long have you been holding on to that?
maybe a little too long. I think I might have been holding it a little too long. It's a little too smooth for Zen flavor. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, it does taste like it's dead.
Yeah, the fruit's kind of dropped out. Yeah, which, that can happen.
That's
Yeah.
strike 2. But see, this is another example of why you watch our show. If you store the wrong wine for too long,
Yeah,
it becomes not very good.
you got to drink it at the right time. And
It really drops off. You're absolutely right. It's just, Bobby P has brought 2 strikes to you guys and a lot of wine tonight. But see, the funny thing is, when we had that at that event several years back almost.
it was great. And
It was great.
That was 2 years ago.
Yep.
That was a great
Actually,
wine.
I think it was almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating how a wine, even though it was stored properly, was not in a hot environment, was stored properly, can just die. And this is an example. It's really hard to explain, but it hits your palate, then dies. So I want to thank all of you guys. I want to thank Jim. I want to thank Eli for being on the show. Check us out, Jim, as you always say.
You can watch previous episodes of our show on WHCTV.org or on YouTube.com. And if you have a question or comment for us you'd like us to address on the show, please friend us on Facebook. We're at 2 Guys and a Lot of Wine. And send us a message through Facebook, and we'll address that here on the show.
So until next time, Zanies for Zins, happy Thanksgiving, and keep all of us in your wine cellar.